Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome. It's February. Can you believe this? This is my birthday month. It's the month of Aquarians. Today is also, and did you know this, Judi? This is National Optimist Day.
And being the eternal optimist that I am, that's good to
I'm
hear.
the cockeyed optimist,
Yes,
but
indeed.
and I love this because here we are. We're optimistic about a lot of things this year. The direction this country is going in. Tomorrow is Groundhog's Day. Hoping that spring. Is it spring where you are?
It's chilly where I am. It's real. I mean, I am in Naples, Florida, right? Which is normally hot and sunny, and it was 46 degrees this morning when I got up, so it's been chilly.
Well, there's a lot to be optimistic about. As I say with my regular Richard Skipper Celebrate shows, that I believe that every day is to be celebrated if we take the time to find something to celebrate. And it's interesting because one of our local newsmen, and I think he's been watching my show, because now he begins the weather report by telling all the days that are being celebrated.
Ah,
And we'll see if he talks about Optimist Day tonight. And then I know he's watching his show. We've got three amazing artists on the show today, and they are all, I think, optimist as well. We're going to find out, but knowing them the way that I do, I think I could say that they are. But as I like to do, I've got four mystery cards laid out. So pull a question 1 through 4.
3.
And your question is, would you rather give up your smartphone or your computer?
Ooh. Um. Hmm. Probably computer, because the smartphone can do all the things that the computer can do. So if I had to have just one, it would be this. It would be the smartphone.
Have you been following the hearings that have been going on in Washington about
Yes,
the harms that computers and social media actually
yeah,
have
social media,
had on younger kids?
absolutely, and I agree. It's awful. Kids are bullied. They're sexually exploited. It's there are no real safeguards for all of that, and I don't know that how much there can be. I know that they try to screen people as much as they can, presumably, but
I've got the perfect solution. I remember a time where the TV used to sign off at 1 o'clock in the morning with the national anthem. I
right,
think that that's what we should do. I think all social media should shut down at a certain time each day or not be available so that
right.
people can communicate with each other again. People are not going out the way they used to go out. I don't think, as difficult as this is on our kids, it's affecting a lot of adults the same way.
Oh, sure.
We are judging ourselves based on our likes and our shares, and then FOMO, seeing what everybody else is doing with their lives. It to me, it's a very invasive part of our lives that I would love to go back to a time where social media did not exist. As
Yeah,
much as I love it,
well,
we wouldn't be able to do this without social media.
that's fine.
Uh,
No, I don't think that day is coming, Richard. So
I
I
don't
think
think it's going to come. Well, I'll tell you someone who is coming, and that's my dear friend Shelly Goldstein.
all
And I
right.
am so thrilled that she's waiting in the wings. And
Hello.
Shelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my darling. I have a very easy solution to internet bullying that is so simple that you could keep it 24/7 and it would solve all sorts of problems.
All right, let's hear it.
Use your real name. You got to use your real name. You can't be, whatever.
Alias, anonymous.
Hide
Yeah.
behind something. Yeah. Well, you can't police that. I mean,
It's really that simple because it's so easy to be mean when you can hide behind an alias
Well,
that
I
usually is
remember when social media began, that you had an IP address would be able to trace back to the original source.
Now there are ways to hide yourself and you
Yeah.
know behind
No,
a
it's difficult to find that.
magic server and things like that, you
Yeah.
know.
And, again, how do you police it? You can't say, well, they have to provide an ID. I don't know about you, but every 16-year-old I knew got a fake ID.
Well, I mean that's the real bottom line about most things in the world is the internet, yes, multiplies problems that we grew up with by a trillion. It used to be generations, it would be doubled or tripled. It's so the problems are the same problems. I was ridiculously not only made fun of and bullied sort of every day. And there was a group of girls that used to rob me every day at the same corner. And what was funny is one of them, when I started college, was working in the student union cafeteria, and she let me eat free every day because she said, "Oh, we were so awful to you. Just take what you want and go through." So, sometimes there's a happy ending to that, but
Right.
more often than not, kids get it really hard because
Kids get it really hard, and there was one guy in school that bullied me, and I was always afraid of this guy. But nowadays, it's not just the fact that one person is bullying you. And I heard a mother talk yesterday at the Senate hearings that her daughter committed suicide, unfortunately, at 11 years old.
Oh,
Um, uh, and she showed the tweets that this person was sending out. Things like, "I hope you die," your family hates you, your friends
Mm.
hate you.
Mm,
But
mm,
that
mm,
wasn't
mm,
just
mm.
going to her, it was going
Imagine the darkness in someone's soul that sends that out to somebody else who is perceived as weaker than they are. Because that's all
absolutely.
bullying is. I mean, and unfortunately, and I'm not going there, but I'm going to say it,
Go
which is
there.
kind of contradictory. When at the top you have someone bullying and not caring about norms of decent behavior or following rules or ignoring anything from you know a courtroom opinion or the results of an election or something like that with no basis, then why is it surprising that that's what trickles down? The economy doesn't, but mean trickles
Well,
down
Shelly, I'm gonna
all
go
over
a
your
step
face.
further, and I wanna talk specifically about you for a second
Me,
because,
cockeyed and an optimist.
Uh, wonderful. So am I. It's not just what's happening in there, but it's happening in our media. When you look at reality television, for example, every reality-based show is based on one-upmanship. Someone is only going to make it to the top, and everyone else is going to be made to feel less than. It's this competition. I want to bring it around to you because you are a writer and you have been in the business for some time. And
Hundreds of years.
when you started out as a comedy writer, um, a lot of comedy I find nowadays is not as situational as much as it is um, insult humor. Was that the case when you first began?
Oh, honey, comedy isn't really any different. What's different is people's reaction to it in a good way and in a bad way.
Mhm,
It's valid to find umbrage in something. It is not valid to look for it.
mhm.
To just say whatever you say, I'm going to be pissed off. And there's a lot of that right now.
mm,
So, I have always tried, and I've written on more different types of television shows than you can imagine. I've faced every possible thing type of genre.
On
Uh,
both sides of the screen.
yeah, I have always tried to write from intelligence, from reality, from the human condition. I'm not an insult comic, but like anything else, there are insult comics who are absolutely brilliant, and there are insult comics who are mean.
mhm.
There are situational comics who are brilliant, and there are that are boring. So it's just I'm very down right now on painting anything with just one brush. because it's about your intention and frankly about your skill. And you know, we were talking about this for a minute before the show began. The difference between someone disagreeing with you and someone being snubbed. Snub is the
Thank
word
you.
of the
So I would love your take
segue right
on the
there.
word snubbed.
Nobody is snubbed. To be snubbed, that means, you know, and I'm specifically going to put it towards the Oscars because that's the thing this week. The Golden Globes, someone was snubbed. The DGA Awards, someone was snubbed. The Oscars, everyone was snubbed. Did Greta Gerwig deserve a nomination for directing the most influential film of the year? Of course she did. But did everyone in Hollywood sit down and say, okay, we're not voting for her? You also never know the numbers. So
That's
you
right.
don't know if you know, there's 5 spaces. You don't know if the 6th person in that line missed out by 2 votes or by 2,000 votes. You know, and unfortunately, we don't find that out. You find that out in elections, which is good. But we have to stop thinking it again is that thing that, okay, I disagree with this, so something's fixed. You know, that's how you get that, you know, Taylor Swift is a bot out to destroy the universe, which is crazy.
Right.
She's a hardworking, beautiful, talented, incredibly successful woman who, you know, like Barbie, has made her own lane and is just brilliantly traveling it. And aren't we all enjoying watching it happen?
Absolutely. Well, I want to bring on our next guest. We're not going to snub her. But before we bring Marty on, I'm going to ask you, which would you rather give up, your smartphone or your computer?
Well, that's kind of easy. I mean, as a writer, I have to have my computer, but your phone can come through your laptop.
That's true. That's true.
So, you know, I actually do use my phone as a phone, which most people don't anymore.
True. That's true.
But you can get all the apps on your laptop, and I can get my work done.
And
know,
there are 3 cards laid out. So pull a number 1 through 3.
1, 2, 3. Let's go with 3.
And your question is, would you rather be slightly late or super early?
I'm always super early. Always. Always. I was born 3.5 weeks early, and that set the template. Also,
Except when you get
the only time in my life I was officially underweight is when I was born. But
Well, I want to bring up our next guest, and
all
that's
right.
Marty Millett. And Marty has an incredible show celebrating her correspondence with Stephen Sondheim. It started at a very early age. She did the show, and everyone's raving about the show. And due to the success of that show, she will be bringing the show back, this time at the Laurie Beechman Theater on February 13th. Marty, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'm
So
lovely to be in such great company.
Unless you get the wrong link, are you normally super early or late?
Super early? Yeah. And the funny thing about, you know, living in New York City is you're at the mercy of the transit system, of course. And you really are either super early or slightly late. Hopefully not super late. That drives me up the wall. I was raised in the Midwest. I was raised in Ohio, and given this kind of, you know, Protestant work ethic that I think has always stuck with me. And also I learned doing community theater. And also, I guess when I was in college at Ohio State, these were theatrical ethics for us. Rehearsal starts at 4. That means it starts at 4. That doesn't mean you show up at 4.
Right.
And I just...
And none of these in the rehearsal studio.
Oh, I mean, I haven't worked in professional theater at this point for so long. It was before that. And people are telling me stories about people standing in the wings, waiting for an entrance, looking at their phones.
Right.
In my day, et cetera, et cetera.
No. I'm the same way. I feel the same way.
I think you should be focused on what it is you're there to do. And I don't, it's supposed to be Optimist Day. So I was listening to the previous discussions and thinking of mostly curmudgeonly things that I wanted to add to the discussion. I'm going to not do that.
Let me start with the curmudgeon thing, and then you can go from there. I went to the theater the other night to see this amazing production of Once Upon a Mattress. I'm sure you've all been hearing about it. Amazing cast. Everything is wonderful. The second that the actors leave the stage, everyone grabs their phones and they're on their phones. I'm the kind of person, I want to talk to the person sitting next to me. I want to know what their thoughts are on the show. I want to really be in the moment of really being in the theater. And I never, ever, ever turn my phone on when I'm in the theater or a cabaret show or anything for that matter.
First of all, people turn on their phones at intermission and then invariably forget to turn them off. And so in Act 2, you have during the big, I went to see, what's the O'Neill play that was with Cherry Jones? This was now, in 2000 or something. Cherry Jones and Gabriel Byrne in A Moon for the Misbegotten. And you're waiting the entire play for that monologue he does at the end about traveling all night on a train with his mother's dead body on it. And it's the climax of the show. And it's so quiet and his head is in her lap. And in the middle of his damn monologue, and everyone in the place was like, the moment is ruined.
It's gone. It's gone forever.
Ruined. Mm-hmm. And now you're paying $300 to have your monologue ruined. Ugh.
That happened when I went to see Orphans, which is about these two young kids who are orphans. Their parents are both gone. They're trying to survive without going to an orphanage or being shipped off to live with a relative. And they've robbed someone. And at the end of the play, there's this incredible monologue where one of the character is talking about how they move forward. And right in the middle of his monologue, a woman's phone went off in the front row. And she was fumbling around in her purse to find it. She couldn't find it. And it was one of those phones that got louder and louder and louder.
Oh, Lord.
As the ring went on.
And it's always some alta-cocker that doesn't even know how to turn off the ringer.
Right, exactly. Shelly, what is the strangest experience that you've had with a phone going off, either with you being on stage or you being in the audience?
Well, wow. By the way, I just want to say I'm dying to see Once Upon a Mattress. I've played Winifred twice and I want to play it again. I've had phones go off at the most ridiculous times. There was one, I wish I could remember the song, but it was one of those things about, I'm waiting for him to call. And then the phone rang. And I was like, okay, there he is.
Oh, good. Well,
let's go to a new song.
My shows are really audience driven. So I live for someone's phone going off when I'm on
as
stage.
much as it's annoying, I mean, the joy of a cabaret experience is that you make it part of the show.
Right.
If you're doing Eugene O'Neill, even the great O'Neill was not prepared to deal with mobile phones. So you just want to Patti LuPone them,
Exactly.
Life.
And Judi, what about you? Have you had an experience where you were at a show and you were robbed with someone's phone going off?
Oh, absolutely. I volunteer at 2 local theaters here. And one of the things I do is tell every person that I talk to walking in, make sure your phone's off, make sure your phone's off. And when they come back at intermission, I do it again. I go, phone's still off, right?
Well, I want to get our next guest on here so we can have a real big discussion with everybody. But Marty, there are 2 cards left. So 1 or 2?
2.
And your question is, would you rather live, in an apartment in the city or a mansion in the country?
Well, I think if you know me, you know the answer to that question. Apartment in the city. And I gave up living in, not in a mansion, but a house out in the country. I gave that up twice, moved here when I was 22 and struggled for a very long time, married the first time. And my then husband got a terrific teaching job in Missouri. And we didn't have a mansion, but we had a nice, beautiful house in Springfield, Missouri. And that ended up basically putting the nail in the coffin of that marriage. There were other things wrong, but it was one of the many things that I learned from making that choice, that it's one of the things that I need in my life. I'm a New York creature.
I'll tell you something else you need in your life, and that's a holy roller. And that's the name of this guy's show. Thomas Miller!
What a segue. What a segue.
Well, exactly.
So Thomas, doing this show off Broadway, have you had nights where a phone has gone off?
We have not had phones go off. We have had some video taking, which is a no-no. And, what can you do except, smile extra hard in their direction and hope that they get the message. But luckily, nothing so far in the last 3 weeks.
Well, good for you. Well, tell us about the show a little bit.
The show is, it's a new musical. We're playing at the Players Theater. We've got 2 more weekends left. It's a new musical comedy, second to none, about a priest who I play who gambles away the parish's money on a horse named Jesus. And then he forces 3 nuns to join a bowling team, and I play their bowling coach to try to win this grand prize so they can repay the church fund before the bishop comes back. And then I play the sports commentator who's at the desk, relaying all that. I think it's the first bowling musical. I might have to be fact-checked on that. But we bowl, and it's great fun comedy. I like to say it's the Book of Mormon meets nonsense. For those of you that went to Catholic school like I did, it's you're healing your trauma a little bit by some of the laughs you may have. It's a great time.
Sounds terrific.
So you also, and Thomas and I met because earlier this past year, I was invited out to do a talk back with your theater. They did the most amazing production of Hello, Dolly. And I mean, it was the bar for how the show should be done.
Oh, that's like the highest praise I can.
I asked Thomas
when you say
afterward, I said, Gower champions choreography, every nuance. I mean, when I saw Warren Carlyle, if you're watching Warren, I love what you did with Bette Midler, but there were nuances that I missed that Gower had, and you had all of those nuances. And I asked you about that. Do you remember your answer?
I loved, there was a video from Lincoln Center that I had seen years and years ago, and it stuck with me so much. And now I think on YouTube there is still a touring, a video of the tour. It's there, like archival footage. And I mean, to see that, the footage is a little rough, but oh my gosh, to see Carol doing that.
But you painstakingly copied that choreography and gave the audience what they remembered from the show.
And when you have something that iconic and nostalgic, of course we had to adapt things to fit in our space. We didn't have a passerelle, but it's iconic. It's what the show needs. And I wanted to pay homage to that. And of course we added other little nuances, but I knew I had to go back to the original to really do it justice.
Well, I want to talk with all of you about, we live in a culture now where audiences are very different, as Shelly mentioned earlier in her comments about how we perceive what we're seeing or hearing sometimes. And my dear friend Leroy Reams, he says that it's like creating a red velvet cake. We all know what a red velvet cake looks like and tastes like. But let's say that for this particular production, you're going to change this ingredient with this ingredient and this ingredient. He says it damn well better tastes better than the original. Otherwise, why bother? And I'll start with you, Shelly, as a writer, as someone, new people are coming in and they feel that they can enhance the original. And I think it's always great to have creative ideas to come in and present your own version of something. But sometimes changing something completely from what the original artist intent was. I personally have a knee-jerk reaction to that. As a writer, as someone who's really entrenched in this business, what is your take on revisals and people reimagining great works that we've come to know?
I think again, and I really do believe this. It's sort of what I said already. It has so much to do with what it is you're trying to say and why you're trying to say it in a new way. If it's just, oh, well, let's, throw out everything that made it work just to, sort of raise your finger at a convention, that's not really very creative. Again, the word of the day is Barbie. Look at what she did there.
Yes.
Look at what she did. And I remember years ago, I wrote a screenplay and it had the character of God in it. And the way I described it was the character had to keep morphing as you saw it, and it would start out, a white man, then it would be a white woman, then it would be a black child, then it would be a Puerto Rican grandmother, then it would be an Asian, trans person, just because God is everywhere.
Mhm.
And I sort of like that she did that with Barbie, that it spoke to women in all sorts of ways. And I believe that left a lot of men kind of confused. It's a little more complicated.
Mhm.
But when you're going to take something like, say, Hello, Dolly, I love the original. I'm old enough to have, it was the first musical I ever saw when Carol Channing did the tour in Chicago. I was 6 years old and my parents took me to see it. And I saw her again 30 years later doing the same production in Toronto. And I remembered everything and it was so perfect. But if someone is going to take it and find some way of bringing something new to it, in the same way that, there are so many lazy adaptations of, oh, well, let's just turn some successful movie into a musical.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean it's going to work. But if there's a way to make it expand in a new way, how exciting is that? So it's just, I always say, what is your intention? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to broaden the stage and the perspective and make it more accessible to a larger audience? Or are you just trying to say, screw you to the past and darken it? We
Mhm.
do a lot of darkening right now, and it's a time for light.
I absolutely, and that's what my show is all about. Marty, as a singer, you have created your own piece with your current show, and obviously you are doing songs from the Stephen Sondheim canon, but you're telling your story. So you're making the songs uniquely your own. I
Yes.
remember once that uh, uh, well, my brain just went completely blank. And Lady Day,
Billie Holiday.
Billie Holiday. I couldn't think for a moment. Senior moment. Billie Holiday was once asked about her songs being sung by others. She said, "I gave birth to them. Now it's time to the singers to raise them." And I
Mhm.
loved that response. As a singer, putting your own take on things, are you thinking at all, and I'm sure you are, about how the audience is going to perceive these songs through the lens of Marty Millett?
Um, I I am, but that's one of the last thoughts that I have, because the most important thing that I have to do is tell the truth.
Mhm.
And in this show, it's my truth. And when I'm doing a show with a script and a director and a musical director, then I want to be true to the text. I want to try, if I can, to tell the truth that the people who wrote the show wanted to deliver. When I'm doing my cabaret, because I come from, my degree is in opera. I did a lot of musical theater before I kind of went through ingenue menopause and went, oh, no one's going to cast me anymore. I'll do cabaret. It was very hard for me to make the transition from, this is, especially with Sondheim, this is what's on the page. This little orchestral riff here has to be in the song, or because this is the way Steve intended it. And then I met my husband, who is also my collaborator on these shows, my husband is Michael Guerin. He's a fantastic musician. He's a very different kind of musician from me. He plays completely by ear. He can read music, but not with enough facility that he would be able to sight read a Sondheim score. He listens to something a couple of times. He might want the chord symbols, but then he plays it his own way. And the idea of doing it that way originally filled me with dismay. And then the pandemic happened. And we started doing these Sondheim songs in our weekly live streams, and he could only play them his way. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't go out and hire Tracy Stark or Billy Stritch to play these things for me. I was forced to find a way to tell my truth of these songs with his arrangement playing in the background. And ultimately, it was a gift. It was a huge gift. Michael puts, as he likes to say it, he puts junk in the trunk of a lot of these Sondheim songs. He funks them up. And, you know, I have this pearl clutching Broadway geek inside of me saying, how dare you do that to Steve? But, you know, Steve had a history of really liking these different treatments as long as they were done authentically for a reason, with the idea of telling a truth by doing it that way. And we've all heard Sondheim messed with in a way that made us go, why? Why would you do that? Hopefully, I'm not one of those.
Well, I mean, I will say that one of the greatest arrangements, I love Leah Delaria's version of the Ballad of Sweeney Todd. If you've never heard it, go and listen to it, because it's a completely different take. But every time I hear her do it, it just it gets me every time.
I would struggle to think of anything she's done that I didn't love, because she always comes from her own personal truth. She has a very strong sense of self, which is one of the great things about her as a performer. And that's, well, ideally, that's what we all bring to the table. I love old musicals. The 77 revival of Hello, Dolly was the first Broadway show I ever saw.
Wow. Wow.
I saw that year. I saw that. I saw the revival of The King and I saw Annie. I was 11 years old. I was the same age as Andrea McArdle, who was doing Annie. So I, like everyone else here who saw them, I remember everything about it. Remembered everything about those shows, all three of them.
It's great.
Love old shows, but if we're going to bring them back, I think we have to be aware of our history. I love seeing a fresh take on something, but what I don't like is shoehorning the cause of the moment into an old show without giving any thought to the historical time period we're shoehorning this into. Case in point, the mostly wonderful revival of My Fair Lady a few years ago, which I really enjoyed, and I loved the way they rewrote the ending. But there was a guy in the chorus who was a cross-dresser, which not that bothers me, but in Edwardian England, and this guy was very open, and everyone was having a great time with him. But in Edwardian England, that guy would have been thrown in jail. I mean, you literally could not. You literally could not do that. I'm not saying the guy shouldn't have been in the show. I'm just saying that you can't throw somebody from our time into a different time period without people who know the time period going, well, what would be the ramifications for a guy like that? That's what interests me. If you're going to throw him in there, I want to see something about that. Not just, we're just going to pretend it's 2022 or whatever year that was, 2019. The years pass in the blink of an eye now. But I want to see the truth, and I want to see the historical truth too.
Yes,
I have a thought about that production, and I think My Fair Lady is about as perfect a musical as a musical can be.
Me too.
I think, and let me just say, I am a lifelong card-carrying feminist, and that, you know, it comes into play in everything I do. But I think a mistake was made with That My Fair Lady. Henry Higgins is not a sexist. He's a misanthrope. He hates everybody. Seriously, he does not look down on Liza because of her economic status or because of her gender. He just, you know, he is his entire world. And I think it was a mistake to paint him that way, because I don't think that's who he is.
No, he's
And
not
in
a
terms of-
misogynist any more than yes,
No.
the same to everyone. It's
He's
in the
just, he's a
script.
misanthrope, you know.
The same to
People
everyone.
do not live up to what he wants them to be. So he's an equal opportunity, you know, jerk at times.
Right,
Just-
right. Well, I wanted to say that Tanya Pinkins, who I am a huge, huge fan of, and both on and off stage, because she speaks her mind. And she believes that we are in grave danger of destroying the theater by trying to appease every marginalized section of our world in every production that comes down the pike. And I want to ask you, Thomas, as a producer and as a director, and you do phenomenal work, and you do a lot of you revisit the classics a lot, and of course a lot of characters and things from a different era and different writers and a different state of mind. How do you address that, trying to be true to the form in which it was written in today's world of people being triggered?
You know, it's a great question, and was thinking all along while we're talking about this. I mean, there's so much about representation, and I think there's a line between seeing yourself represented on stage and, you know, of course, rewriting history. That's not what we're trying to do. And of course, I think my generation, we are all about moving forward. But I loved I still can't get over it. I think about it probably once a day, is what they did with Some Like It Hot. I don't know if any of you saw it, but the way that they took the gender conversation and put it in this classic movie that everybody loves. Everybody loves that movie. And race. Sugar was a Black woman, and they talked about it. It wasn't just to say they moved the time period to just before Prohibition ended. At the end of the show, they celebrate the end of Prohibition, but by just moving it a couple of years, I heard them talking about it in an interview. They were able to have this conversation about what it meant for Sweet Sue, who was also played by a Black woman, to bring a troop of women of mixed race through the South. Like, I think that by putting it, to your point, Marty, of by putting it in that context, by rewriting that story, that really added to the whole experience. And for Daphne they say at the end, you know, you can call me Jerry or Daphne as long as you do it with respect. I thought that was so brilliant. Oh my goodness. And I was surprised that it didn't get all the traction that it did. But I think as long as, again, like, you're doing it with respect to the original material, as well as what there's always a reason to produce theater. I think just to haul something out because it hasn't been done in a while isn't always a great reason. I saw the encores Once Upon a Mattress last night and thought the way that they updated the script a little bit, they kind of combined a couple of characters to pack more of a punch, but it still felt, I've done the show twice, I was like, oh, you know, it packs a punch, and they added a couple jokes. They punched it up for this generation so they would understand that. And now there's somebody who's never seen that show before that's going to go see it because Sutton Foster and Michael Urie are in it at Encores this weekend, and they're going to love that show, and they're going to go back and watch the Carol Burnett version, and they'll fall in love with that too, I have no doubt. I think that by revising sometimes, as long as it's done with respect and intention to the original, with the intention of the original piece, we're actually we're salvaging these classics. Oh my goodness. And I love the Encore series. I try to go whenever I can.
It's an amazing.
I agree with everything you just said. Yes.
Yeah. I love what you said about Some Like It Hot. changing, changing the years a little bit and dealing with the realities of that.
Yes.
What I don't like is suddenly, this happens a lot on television, where you'll watch a television show that's set in the 1940s or the 1950s, and a woman is a president of a company, and there's no sexism there, and it's an incredibly diverse.
And it's never mentioned, and it's never talked
Yeah,
about.
like
the
it's just normal.
ramifications.
And that's
very interesting. I had Brian Batt on my show a few weeks ago, and he was talking about Tales of the City, and he said one of the actors, when they were doing the table read, one of the actors, a very young actor, was offended by the usage of certain words in the show. And it took the older actors and the older people working on this production to explain to him that in the context of the time that they were going through, that's exactly the way that these characters spoke to each other. I've got a question for you, Shelly, and I'm going to put it on the screen because this is from Peter Kyra. Am I pronouncing that right?
Putting my glasses on. Let me see.
Okay.
Peter Yerbal, it was in Hello Dolly. They played one of the waiters.
Oh, okay, great.
So my love to them.
Thank you,
God,
Peter,
I love that
being
production.
here.
Are misanthropy and misogyny necessarily distinct? Equal mistreatment hurts the disadvantaged more de facto. No. You're making a wonderful point, Peter, and I do not. I'm not arguing for mistreatment of anyone. I'm just saying that it's kind of easy to say with Higgins, oh, well, his problem is he just doesn't think women deserve to be equal. And it's like, well, you're missing the bigger point. He's got a hole in his soul that Eliza fills in a way that he never expected. And she brings out some of the best of him that you're hopefully going to see at the end when she does return to be with him. I don't think she returns to him to be under his thumb by any means. He's taught her way too well, and he realizes that. So I think it's just a question of it's certainly not in any way justifying mistreatment of anybody. It's just being, again, the word we keep coming back to is truth and honesty and reality of the times. And even with the cross-dressing person in the chorus, men dressing as women in England goes back to long before Shakespeare. So again, and pantomime, pantomime dames have been the most popular in British theater since the 1500s. So and still are to this day. So I just don't like cramming our ideals, which are good. I'm not saying let's get rid of our ideals, but let's not pretend that they always existed, because then you're discounting all of the generations of women, of men, of people of every binary who have fought to make things better and to change things, and it encourages us to continue to change. I enjoy watching Mad Men, where people are despicable. And the way people are treated are despicable, and it's horrible. And it's this one tiny little less than 1% running everything. But look what we've come. And as you watch the progression of that show, watch people rise up, watch people realize who they are and what they can do. And if you start where everything's fine, we have nowhere to go. And we have so far to go. We have so much to fight for.
Well,
So
to me,
then-
as an artist, and I'm sure that you all agree with this, that our job as artists is to reflect the world through our lens. And that's why I have a real problem with people wanting to put people in boxes as to the roles they should play. Only gay people should play gay characters, for example, and vice versa. I would like to know what it is like to experience what that person has gone through. And sometimes the best way to experience that is as an actor, being able to play those roles. Another comment from Peter, and I love this, Peter. I definitely feel like it's tough to nail that hole in the heart while balancing the reality of today's times. We're doing My Fair Lady this summer at our theater. So they'll be working hard, I'm sure.
Peter, are you in the production, and what are you playing? I want to see Peter in my play.
I don't think they've cast it yet, but it's very exciting. It's at the theater up in Rhinebeck, Richard.
Oh, it is.
The Center for Performing Arts at Rhinebeck.
Available.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
I think it'll be great. We're so not there yet, and I understand people wanting to represent themselves in casting. When we get to the place that I hope we will get to, where everybody can play everything, won't it be wonderful when it's not a problem anymore? We're not there yet. We're not there yet. So, people who have not been seen need to be seen.
Well, Pearl Bailey, going back to Dolly for a moment, when Pearl Bailey did the first all African-American company of Hello Dolly, to put it in the perspective of 1967, it was the all-Black production of Hello Dolly. But when she came back to do the revival with Billy Daniels, she said to the producers, I want a flower garden. I want people from all different races. And she had Asian actors and Black actors and Caucasian actors and Mexican actors. She insisted, and she was part of the process. She was there in the casting room when they were casting that production. And I think that was being way ahead of our time.
She was brilliant. I mean, this summer in London, Old Friends, the Sondheim review, Lea Salonga, one of the greatest singers of any time, sang Mama Rose for one of the numbers. And if you haven't heard her sing Everything's Coming Up Roses, watch the video and your head will explode with joy. And there's talk now of doing a production of Gypsy with a, non-white Mama Rose.
It's happening.
Great. Fabulous.
Audra McDonald is going to be playing Mama Rose.
Ooh.
Oh yes, of course. I was referring to in the UK, but yeah, who wouldn't want to see Audra McDonald do that?
Yes.
My God.
I'd watch her do anything. To be frank,
absolutely. I want to see her play, Miss Tyrone in Long Day's Journey into Night. I mean, everybody should be playing everything. And yet we can still have respect for, as Richard pointed out, the gorgeousness of the original productions.
Well, Shelley, I'm sure you know David Zimmerman. And David Zimmerman has an incredible workshop that he does called Meet the Biz.
I've lectured with him several times.
And I have also been on with his actors. And, many disabled actors. But one of the actresses that spoke once, she's a little person. And she said that when she walks into an audition, immediately they think Wizard of Oz, Christmas Show at Radio City Music Hall, Willy Wonka. They don't see her as a mother, as a grandmother, a lover, all of the things that she is in her life. But as much as we're trying to do this, and Shelley, you're right, we have a long way to go. I would hope that the people on the other side of that table will begin to look through a different lens in terms of the way that they cast the world. Because the world is made up of different people.
Can I just say, I saw How to Dance in Ohio. It closes next weekend. If you haven't gotten a chance to see it, the cast is absolutely phenomenal. And it's a story about people on the spectrum, people with autism, and every person in that show is who is playing a character with autism is a person with autism. And all I could think of is, I can't wait to see what is next. I mean, this show is so important, and I was there surrounded by several field trips, and to see like this younger generation reacting to this story was phenomenal. But all I kept thinking is, I can't wait to see what's next for some of these performers, because they are this is just the start for them. This is the beginning of them saying, here's who I am, and putting it forward. And, they might be in this revival of Gypsy, let's hope, or whatever the next big thing is. It's so important to see them, and then this will, I think, just catapult them.
Absolutely.
I just really want to see new shows being written for the best way to get representation for all of these groups and subgroups is for new works to be written by these people, for all of us, that tell the truth about them, that allow them to be who they are in the characters that are written that way. And of course, the big stumbling block is, how do you get a musical produced? It's harder than it's ever been. How to Dance in Ohio didn't have a long run. A Strange Loop, an African-American gay musical, which I adored it. I was screaming my face off watching that musical. Didn't have a long run. It's very frustrating, and the old stuff keeps coming back, and so we shoehorn our representation into these old shows.
I have a dear friend, Tim Jerome, and Tim Jerome was in the Rothschilds on Broadway. He's done, I think, 13 Broadway shows. He's 80 years young, and he is devoting himself to, he has a company, and they want to do new musical works, and he wants to get this into the college system so that they will do these readings of new works in hopes of putting them around the country. The biggest fallacy that we have in this country is that it's all about Broadway, and theater is happening everywhere, and new works need to be produced, and not just on Broadway. And the work that he is doing is incredible. I also feel that the producers on Broadway are negating their audiences. I think that's the biggest issue on Broadway. When people are trying to get, for example, a younger audience to come into the theater, when a younger audience doesn't want to be in the theater, I'm not saying you negate that audience. It's important that we embrace them. But quite frankly, I don't want to be in the audience of a group of people who would rather be on their phones than engage with what's going on stage. Work to bring your audiences what they want to see. And the biggest mistake that most artistic directors make in this country is negating their audience. And it's very important that we play to the audiences and the people that are going to the theater. And I think it's great to shake things up, but it's also important that we open the doors and really play to those people who are genuinely interested. I, for example, not a big surprise, am not going to spend a lot of time going to a lot of football games, because that's not something that interests me. And if they were spending all their time trying to get me to the stadium, I think they might be wasting their time.
Mhm.
But we need to focus on getting an audience that wants to go to the theater. And and when theaters start to do that, we're going to find more and more people in the theater. Judi, you've been quiet.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking, and there's a kind of another element that I think is really important to bring up here, and that's context, right? It really depends on the context. Who's your audience? What is this particular theatrical, show about? What period was it? Is it true to the period? Is this something we can update legitimately, or is that, putting lipstick on a pig, as they say? Is that just trying to make something it's not, right? And by doing that, are you actually ruining the core elements that made it a success in the first place? So context is everything. Also, you're talking about off Broadway, including regional theaters, and regional theaters are very different from Broadway. They have a different audience, and that's something you also have to consider. So that a show that works on Broadway might not work in Texas somewhere. I don't know. It's a different audience. So I think context is a huge piece of this. And in terms of making sure that casts are inclusive and whatnot, again, I think it's context. Some shows that works, other shows it doesn't, because of the show itself. So it's something that, you have to really consider when you're doing certainly a revival of anything, but even with new shows, you have to consider, what really works in this context. So,
Wow. Well, first of all, I've enjoyed this show so much today. Shelly, Marty, Thomas, and Judi, you brought so much to the table. I'm going to give each of you a chance to have your final word in just a moment. But before we get there, I want to let everyone know, please follow Shelly and Marty and Thomas. I will have links on the YouTube channel so that you can keep up with what's going on, what's coming up for all of them. If there's anything that you want to know about any of them, reach out to me, and I'm sure that they will get back to me and we'll get to you. Peter, thank you for your comments through the show today, and thank you all for watching. And Thomas, I didn't ask you your mystery question, and here it is. Would you rather be rich or famous?
Oh boy, rich or famous? Well, I think with a little bit of money, maybe I could make some difference in the world. Because I think another whole conversation, especially talking about young people in the theater, just to bring it full circle, is young people aren't going to Broadway shows because they can't afford
You
it
can't
most of the
afford it.
time, and that's why some of these these shows that are aimed towards younger people, they're flopping because the people that it's marketed for can't afford to be in the seats. So when I'm very rich, I don't care about the fame. I'll have some sort of development fund, and it really was so thrilling to be around all of these young people. There were probably fourth grade students through 12th grade students at this matinee yesterday, groups with autism there. It was phenomenal, and it was on my mind all day, thinking this is what needs to happen. We need accessibility in the theater for all to enjoy, and shows need to be done in places that they wouldn't normally be done to expose that audience and get them thinking about the details, the situations in that show. So just to bring it full circle.
I read a quote today. There's a great book. It's called The Frugal Book Promoter. But this book is about anything that you're promoting. And it's a great book. And I read this quote today. And this is from Disraeli. And it says, without publicity, there can be no public support. So it's very important that we get the word out for whatever we're doing. Venues, when you book an artist, take a vested interest in that artist. It takes very little effort to send out a mass email to everybody that comes in through your doors to say, this is what's coming up this month. We hope that you will be there to be a part of it. I love all of you so much, and you add so much, but don't go anywhere for a moment, because as I said, you're going to get a chance to have your final word. It could be about anything that we spoke about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any final message that you want to leave everyone with based on what we said today. One thing that struck me with all of you is all of you remember that first time that you went to the theater, what that experience was like for you. And if you get the chance, everybody watching the show, all of my guests on the show, take a young person to the theater who has never been to the theater before, and then go out afterwards and talk about what the experience was like for them. I pitched an idea to a local TV station a few years ago during the Tony Award season about how great it would be to take these kids who are going to the theater for the first time and taking them to a show, and then getting them an audience with the star of that show to talk about the show that changed their life. So I'd like Shelly, Marty, Thomas, and Judi, in your closing comments, to tell us about the show that changed your life. I end all of my shows by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Pick up the phone and call someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Reach out to the sixth person on your Facebook friends list and reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, but a phone call. And let that person know the impact that they've made on your life. And by doing so, you're going to make an impact on their life. I have a dear friend, Sean Moniger, and he says, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different sized boats. And I always say, I don't care what size boat you're on, as long as you have a skipper by your side. Ellie, I'm going to turn it over to you. When you finish, you'll pick the next person, and then so on. And we'll let Judi have the final word today. Everybody, go see a live show. It's all yours. Shelly, it's yours.
Oh my gosh. I think the show that opened up my heart in a new way is when I saw Pippin, the original Pippin on Broadway, and also same composer, Godspell, and I got to do the 50th anniversary tribute concert in London last year of Godspell, and I'd never done it when I should have done it, so that was exciting. Yes, take people to the theater, take children to the theater, fight for arts in the schools. Arts in the schools not only help that part of our souls as young people, but it also helps young people read better, be better at science, be better at math. You know, arts in the schools are eliminated because they don't want kids to think. And let us go to Thomas.
Oh boy. Oh, that was so lovely. And thank you all. I so enjoyed the conversation today. It's always an honor to be with Richard. And the show that changed my life, I remember going to a high school production of The Wizard of Oz when I was probably 3.5 or 4 years old. It would be the high school that I ended up going to. They had a phenomenal theater program there, headed by one of my mentors, Lisa Hobson. But I still can picture in that audience, I was sitting up in the bleachers because it was in the gymnasium, and just thinking, I was completely transported, and I could recite the whole movie, and then seeing it live, I thought that was the best thing in the world. Again, it was something that was accessible at the time. It was a local show. It was right in our backyard. We knew neighbors. We knew people that were in that show. Echoing what Shelly said, it's so important for art to be in our schools. I know that I would not be the same person without it. It has saved me. I've seen it save other people. So get out there, support local theater, support theater that's not just Broadway, even though there's phenomenal stuff up there. It was really fantastic being here with you all today. I can't wait to see all of your shows. Awesome. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. Marty.
I'm finding it hard to pick one. I've had so many different shows that changed my life in different ways. But the one that first came to my mind when he said it was the original production of Sunday in the Park with George, which I went to by myself in 1984 when I was 17 years old. It was my senior year of high school. And when that final note of Act One sounded and everyone was in place and they sang Sunday, da, 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 and they stood there in tableau, and there was that moment. There's always that moment, before the applause starts. It went on and on because none of us could believe that they really, I sat there thinking, my God, they made that painting on the stage. And then, the ovation was out of this world. And after the ovation was finished and I was still sitting there and people were getting up for intermission, the guy next to me goes, "That Mandy Patinkin sounds exactly the same as he did in Evita. This stinks." Didn't matter. The lady that he was with, his wife, said, "Quiet, you're going to ruin it for the girl sitting next to you." Didn't ruin it for me. I reiterate, go and see live performances. Go and see theater in places that you wouldn't expect. Go and see the off Broadway and the off and the off Broadway. Oh, and go see my show on February 13th. We're also performing in Boston on February 18th, if anybody watching is in that area. And I know Richard has all that info. Thanks for having me today. It's been a blast.
Thanks. And my most influential show is probably the very first show I ever saw. I saw the original production of Fiddler on the Roof. I was a little kid and my parents took me to see it, and I was transfixed. I was just amazed at the music and the dancing and the heart and soul of that performance. And that made me a lifelong theater fan. So we started the show talking about being an optimist, and it's actually a choice. You choose to be happy. You choose to look at the world in a certain way. So choose wisely. Be happy with what you have and be excited about what you want to achieve in your life, what the possibilities are. If you truly believe it, you can achieve it. And quite possibly, you can achieve a lot more. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.